was that noise? A faint scratching sound seemed to come from somewhere inside my apartment. I froze, straining my ears to locate it. There it was again, a soft but insistent scritch. A chill ran down my spine. I lived alone. There shouldn't be any sounds like that here. I got up from the couch and started checking each room, following the noise. The scratching stopped whenever I entered a new space, only to start up again when I left. By the time I made my way around the whole place, I had myself convinced it was just my imaginations running wild. Probably some pipes or maybe even a mouse in the walls. No big deal. Or so I thought, until the night when I awoke with a start. The scratching was back, much louder this time. It sounded almost frantic, like someone or something was desperately trying to claw its way through the drywall. I sat upright in bed, heart pounding. The horrible sound seemed to be coming from right behind my headboard. I must have fallen back asleep at some point, because the next thing I knew, sunlight was filtering through the curtains. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed something strange. Faint grooves and gouges marked the wall beside my bed. I traced the marks with a trembling finger. They looked almost like scratch marks. Over the next few days, I tried my best to convince myself it was a raccoon in the attic or even a neighbor's cat that had gotten trapped in the wall somehow. But I knew, deep down, that wasn't the case. The noises continued every night, sometimes fading in and out as if whatever was making them was moving around inside the walls themselves. One evening, as I sat watching TV with the volume up to drown out the incessant scratching, a new sound emerged. A rhythmic thumping, like something was knocking on the walls. I cranked the TV even louder until my ears were ringing, trying in vain to block it all out. That night, I barely slept. Every time I drifted off, the horrible scratching and knocking would jolt me awake in a cold sweat. At one point, it sounded like something or someone was scrambling around frantically inside the very walls surrounding my bed. The next morning at work, I could hardly focus. My boss took one look at me and asked if I was okay. Of course, I wasn't about to tell her my apartment seemed to be haunted or infested with God knows what. I mumbled something about insomnia and tried to power through my duties. But that night, as soon as I walked in my front door, it started up again. First the scratching and thumping, and then new noises joined the hellish chorus. A sort of slithery slurping sound, like something wet and boneless was being dragged across the hardwood floors. I wanted to run back outside, to jump in my car and drive away as fast as I could. But some sick, twisted part of me had to know what was making those ungodly sounds. I trembled as I traced the noises to the hall closet door. With a shaking hand, I gripped the doorknob and pulled it open. At first, I saw nothing out of the ordinary, just my vacuum cleaner, some old board games stacked in boxes, a few jackets hanging on the rod. Then my gaze lowered to the floor, and I had to stifle a scream. Dozens of Things were squirming and writhing at my feet. They looked like giant pale worms or slugs, each one ringed with rows of hooked, needle-like protrusions. As impossible as it seemed, those were the creatures that had been scratching and scraping inside my walls all this time. But how? Before I could process what I was saying, the horrific things began slithering rapidly towards me. Those jagged hooks piercing and ripping at the floorboards. They moved with unsettling quickness, quickly surrounding me, covering my feet and legs. I couldn't hold back my screams any longer. I stumbled backwards, slamming the closet door and sprinting for the front entrance. Flinging it open, I raced outside onto the darkened street, not caring who might see or hear me howling in abject terror. I crashed straight into a group of firefighters who were inexplicably already there, their trucks' lights flashing. Ma'am, you need to come down and tell us what's going on, one of them ordered, gripping my shoulders firmly. Between hysterical sobs, I could barely get the words out to describe the horrible things that had invaded my home. The firefighters looked confused, then slowly went inside while holding their axes and hoses. I sat on the curb, shaking hard. A loud scream came from inside. One of the firefighters had seen the swarming horrors up close and was as scared as me. After getting rid of the creatures, a serious exterminator squatted next to me. Ma'am, you were very lucky you called for help when you did. From what I can see, those were Terran Morentails, a very mean and haunting kind of bug that lives underground. I stared at him blankly, my brain refusing to process words. He sighed. The less scientific term is basement dweller, and they mainly hunt by infesting people's houses, burrowing into the walls and floors to ambush prey that comes inside. The fire department had to condemn my entire apartment building. They found many Morentail egg clusters hidden in the old foundations and pipes. A massive new nest king, big enough to eat a person, had made its home underneath the building. I lost whatever few possessions survived the purge, but I didn't care. I was just relieved to escape with my life relatively intact, both physically and mentally. To this day, the faintest screeching or rustling noise is enough to send me into a cold sweat and paralyzing flashbacks. So, if you ever start hearing strange scratching or thumping sounds coming from inside your own walls, get out. Get out while you still can.